Okay, so I've been seeing a decent amount of questions talking about and asking the question about like why is Augmentation Evoker seeing so much play in Mythic Plus? Is Augmentation Evoker good in Mythic Plus? And the spec is utterly broken for dungeons. For 5 mans in particular, the spec is utterly broken. And there's a couple of reasons why, but I don't think it's like super clear to people who haven't played with or played as an Augmentation Evoker as to why the spec is just so super strong in Mythic Plus. And so today I want to kind of talk about how a support style spec that they released recently is utterly shaping and defining the Mythic Plus metagame as we go forward in Season 2. So first off, we can actually take a look at the timed run leaderboards. And so Augmentation Evoker has been out for approximately 1 week, and they are everywhere. Basically, every single run you can click through. All of them have a very similar comp. All of them have an Augmentation Evoker. You see an Augmentation Evoker in every single run. Has there been one yet that doesn't have one? It looks like no. I think that literally every single one that we've seen has had an Aug Evoker. And again, this is a spec that's been out for one reset. And while the reset was quite good in regards to what the keys, I mean, the affixes were solid, the fact that this was a spec that was adopted so quickly into the fray and picked up by so many players so rapidly has definitely changed the metagame. And so whenever you go ahead and you look at the damage that is contributed, I just have a log that I was doing keys earlier this week. If you look at the damage provided by the Augmentation Evoker in Warcraft logs, you might question like how good the spec realistically is. And this is because that there are no hook-ins for Augmentation Evoker damage. Blizzard has stated that okay, so initially they stated whenever Augmentation was coming out that there were going to be hook-ins for community websites and for logs and for details and stuff like that. I think they've walked that back. I think they stated in a most recent interview that they don't want hook-ins for the spec. But as it currently stands, Warcraft Logs does the best they can to try to appropriately match the amount of damage gained from the group to the Augmentation Evoker. And so whenever we would be doing keys, myself and the Shadow Priest, we would be somewhere in the range of like 280k DPS. But then whenever you look at logs or 250k DPS. But then whenever you look at logs, the Augmentation Evoker is in third place DPS, but they're actually a pretty steep amount behind us, which then begs the question, why aren't we playing like a third DPS? What does Augmentation do? So first off, whenever you're looking at logs, you have to take these with a grain of salt. The logs are not accurate for the amount of damage that is provided by the Augmentation Evoker yet. Now, it might get to a state where the logs are accurate with the damage that is going to be provided, but that's not right now. If you were doing a key and the amount of damage that was gained was just this amount by the Augmentation Evoker, I'm just telling you, really look at these and take these with a grain of salt whenever you're looking at the amount of damage that is provided by an Augmentation Evoker. If you've played with an Augmentation Evoker in your group, you know that you were doing a significant amount more damage, like and you're killing trash packs at a substantially faster rate than you were in previous patches, and this is with like a third DPS option. So that's first off. Their damage that is provided to the group and the damage contribution that they bring, while it maybe looks a little bit misleading in Warcraft logs, it's actually very high. And it allows you to be able to time some of the highest level keys because while they look like they do, average to maybe below average amounts of damage, that's not actually the case. And you're seeing that shown pretty handily that players agree that it's definitely one of the best DPS, and also it works well with a lot of stuff that's currently in the meta. And I think that brings it to point 2 as to why Augmentation Evoker is quite solid, because Shadow Priest is required for probably, let's say, like 5 dungeons. So they work really well with an Augmentation Evoker for how they play. And then on top of that, Fire Mage is the other dominant Mythic Plus spec as it currently stands. In both Fire Mage, so whenever Fire Mage is in a spot where it currently sits, where it is like super dominant, you want an Augmentation Evoker to be able to buff up that mage to where the mage can actually carry you. And this is also shown with some of the other dominant comps where it's like a Moonkin instead of a mage, or it's like a I've seen like rogue instead of mage also be played pretty consistently. You also see sometimes like an Ellie shaman instead of the mage, kind of filling into that slot. And so Augmentation Evoker just fits really well with the stuff that you're seeing in the meta. They don't work well with they don't work that great with melee DPS because of like some armor values and like how the damage from Ebb and Might is calculated, but they are still very solid. So the damage is good. They fit well in the meta. And let's talk about point 3 about why they are super good. Their utility. So the utility that is provided by Augmentation is, I would say, unmatched by one singular specialization. There are some things that you need in different situations that are mandatory, such as Mass Dispel. Sometimes you either need a Shroud or a Mind Soothe to be able to get past mobs. Sometimes you need like very specific utility to do specific things. But the general purpose utility and the amount of it that is provided by the Augmentation Evoker is pretty much unmatched. So first off, Upheaval, Tailswipe, and Wing Buffet are, I would say, fairly solid. Like just in regards to mob control, the utility from Drakthir, just in general, plus Upheaval Knockup is really good. I think that Upheaval Knockup it's not something that you typically rely on, but it's great whenever you do have it. On top of that, Evoker does have things such as like Cauterizing Flame, and Expunge, which Expunge can be good in like, let's say like Nelth Slayer. It's great for Neuraxis, where Cauterizing Flames is good for very specific instances. I'm thinking like Halls of Infusion it's pretty good in, like that kind of thing. It's not like mandatory by any means, but all of that is like generically fairly solid utility, with Upheaval, Tailswipe, and Wing Buffet being the 3 that I'm like, okay, I'm really happy to have that. On top of this, they have the ability to Deep Breath Stun, which having like the ability to be able to Deep Breath stun mobs on a 2-minute CD with the Augmentation Evoker is really, really good. And again, it's not reliable, but it's something that you absolutely can play. And then they have other things like Landslide and whatnot, but I don't think that any of that is like super important to talk about. The other utility that is provided, and this is actually one of the biggest pieces of the utility that the Augmentation Evoker brings, and why you're seeing it so commonly, and it will continue to dominate high keys, is the survivability increase that it brings to the party. You're going to see this in TGP because of this. At the highest level of keys, survivability is going to be the most crucial part of being able to time a key, especially this season. And the survivability gained by Augmentation Evoker is unmatched. So first off, they have this talent called Aspect's Favor. And what Aspect's Favor does is, hold on, let me pull it up right here. Obsidian Scales activates Black Attunement and amplifies it to increase the maximum health by 12% for 12 seconds. And it gives it to your whole entire party. This is basically, you are going to be giving like 20% HP to your party every single time you pop your Obsidian Scales. You get 2 charges of the Obsidian Scales, and it is really, really good. Our Evoker that we play with calls out that he's rallying us, and he's personally not only for himself in a lot of instances, but he's utilizing Aspect's Favor as a way to buff us up. Yeah. And that by itself is super broken. On top of that, Zephyr is really solid, just generic class utility. It allows you to have DR versus AoE spell effects, which a lot of the most potent spell effects in dungeons are AoE effects. So you think of things like third boss of Halls of Infusion, the Inundate mob in Halls of Infusion. Those are the ones that immediately come to my mind, just right off the rip. But I mean, you can think of just like a ton of different mobs that Zephyr is incredibly strong for. Twin Guardian, which is the rescue shield. Whenever you rescue a player, you gain a shield relative to 30% of your maximum HP. Also incredibly strong because, again, once you start to get to these higher level of keys, you're going to be starting to get one shot, and just having the ability to be able to buff up other party members and play around their weaknesses in their survivability kit and buff that up and make it sure that they're going to be living is the most important part of timing a dungeon. And you think about Freehold, like the first boss of Freehold, if you use Group Rally for 1, use Group Rally for 2, Twin Guardian somebody after they get shot the first time, you are really putting in a lot of personal legwork to be able to to deal with just like making sure that players in your party live. I think the last thing I want to talk about in regards to party-wide saving ability is Shifting Sands. So you increase the group's versatility by a significant amount, and versatility while it does turn into damage, and that's like, oh great, we're getting more damage. Not only are we getting damage, but we're also gaining a lot of like defensive value from the versatility, and that all of that together from the Augmentation Evoker kit makes them unmatched. And so those are the reasons that you're going to see Augmentation Evoker a lot this season. These are the reasons that you're going to see Augmentation Evoker a ton in the TGP, and in general too, whenever you're looking at their damage, until it gets completely sorted out in both Warcraft logs and details, these numbers are wrong. Like the amount of damage that is provided by Augmentation Evoker is significantly higher. They're making trash packs live a lot. Like the trash packs are dying a lot faster this season than they have ever before, and that's due to a lot of different reasons. But Augmentation Evoker is certainly one of them. Again, this spec is absolutely busted. I would get out here and play it if I were you, and it is going to make for a very interesting season for what we're going to see. Beyond that, I hope you guys all have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you guys later.